Hi, I'm Kristen Bell. Carvana makes car buying easy. Isn't that right, hun? Dax? Dax?
Sorry, did you know about this 7-day money-back guarantee?
A week to evaluate seat comfiness, you say?
A week of terrain tests? Yeah, I can test the brake pad resistance at variable speeds.
Make sure all the kids' stuff fits nicely.
Make sure our stuff fits nicely.
Oh,
Right. Still need to buy the car. Getting ahead of ourselves here.
Buy your car with Carvana today.
Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, that is right, my friends. You've tuned in here to America's home for conservative, not bitter talk. I'm your host, the one and only Todd Huff, behind the microphone here today. My pleasure to be here, my friends. I want to talk about these tariffs and what's been happening. Headline here as we were getting ready for the program today: EU pauses new tariffs on U.S. goods after Trump backs down. You got to love the way that the media portrays this. We're going to talk a little bit about this. This is the program Unfold. We're going to talk about tariffs. We're going to talk a little bit about GDP, what's going on here. Lots of stuff to get into. There's a lot of stuff in the stack of stuff as well, my friends. Thank you for tuning in. Before I get started, though, I want to bring you a message from one of our partners here at the Todd Huff Show. You know, we're selective in how we find our partners here. And Salty is a partner that we've brought to you because it is a product that has benefits, that brings benefits to your heart health. Research has been conducted, and the science has shown that taking Salty can lower your cholesterol. The science has spoken on this, my friends. And so I want to make this available to you. So it's all natural. There's no prescriptions. There's no doctor's visits. Not that there's not a time or place for that. That's between you and your doctor. But this is just a good place to start. It's incredibly affordable. Incredibly affordable. In fact, it's the first 3 months supply with your discount code is under $30. And you get free shipping. So what you're going to do, if you're interested in this, I take the product. I think you should think about it as well. Go to Soltea.com, SOLTEA, Soltea.com. Promo code Todd will save you 50% on your first 3 month supply, and you will get free shipping as well. Soltea.com, SOLTEA, promo code Todd. 2 Soltea soft gels, my friends, is all it takes. And the only thing you have to lose are those high cholesterol numbers. All right. So let's talk about this. First of all, let's talk about how the media has portrayed this. Trump has initiated tariffs against foreign countries, right? Trump has come in. We've gone through this a lot. I don't want to repeat myself. Inevitably, I'm going to, because it's important. You know, you want to repeat the things that need to be said repetitively so that it's understood. It's the focal point. We just don't come out here and chase narratives and talk about gossip for the entire program, or rumors. Some shows do that. You can do that if you will. I'm here to talk about the ideas and why these things matter. And sometimes when we're hitting a point, it has to be repeated. It's for my own good. It keeps me focused, but it also keeps the conversation focused about what really needs to happen and the high points, or the most important aspects of the conversation. And so what we have here with these tariffs, we have a president who's come in and who has said no more. There will be no more of America not being first under my watch. This applies to all sorts of issues. This applies to illegal immigration. This applies to the economy, international trade. This applies to how our military is relied upon or looked to by other countries around the world, all of this stuff. America is not completely isolating herself, but America is not going to be taken advantage of. America is not going to have leadership that allows one-sided, lopsided trade deals in this particular instance, or arrangements where the United States is carrying the lion's share of the responsibility of the world. Listen, there are things that we can and should do that are for the good of all nations that are seeking freedom, and that candidly, they're not good, and this is a good thing, not good actions that we can take. Our mere existence, our focus as a nation on preserving, promoting liberty, that is a direct threat to countries who don't appreciate those values, to leadership around the world in different countries who oppose those sorts of things. That is a good position to take. That is, in fact, where we want to be. This is why the United States, far from being perfect, my goodness, the amount of people that are so convinced not only is the United States not perfect, which is not perfect, but to think that it's a source of evil in the world. It is mind-boggling to me. A kid who grew up in the 1980s during the Cold War, when there were two diametrically opposed forces in this, these superpowers, the United States of America and the Soviet Union. You look at these two things, and to say that they were morally equivalent with each other is beyond the wildest imagination for me to begin to think or understand why someone would think that. Communism it killed to the tune of, 100 million people, big government anyway, 100 million people in the 20th century. This is not a morally equivalent worldview and ideology to that which we have in this nation as a constitutional republic that cares about this idea of self-governance, that has liberty enshrined throughout its founding document. It talks about rights coming from God and not from government. That is antithetical. That is the opposite of what you get from big government communism, big government theocracy, like you have in the Islamic Republic of Iran, or what you might see in the People's Republic of North Korea, for example. The United States has routinely been a shining city on a hill. Again, not perfect, and there are certainly examples of things that have happened in our country's history that are reprehensible and evil. But as a whole, as the claimed ideas upon which a nation is built and the ideals that it is pursuing, the United States of America stands as second to none. This nation is founded upon some truly beautiful ideas, some wonderful concepts. I think that this side of heaven, what we have here in this country, the system of government, now that's notwithstanding. Don't throw the politicians who have manipulated the system, who have tried to benefit from the system. Listen, I'm not talking about individual. Again, this is a quote from William F. Buckley, the late, great William F. Buckley. He said, the problem with socialism is socialism. The problem with capitalism are individual capitalists. In other words, the ideas of socialism, the ideas of big government, the ideas of controlling everything from a centralized group of people is what's wrong with social. Its very basis is eroded. Its very foundation is sinking sand. Whereas a society like ours, well, the United States of America as the prime example, this nation is built upon truth and goodness and light. And yes, we have some reprehensible things in our history, but it's not because of that foundation. It's because of the people who are involved in this great nation. It's because of the leadership, because of the politicians, because of the bureaucratic state, because of individual capitalists who are doing reprehensible things. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter what type of government you have around the world, there are going to be bad apples in all of them. Don't add to the problem by making your very government also fundamentally problematic. That's what big governments do. That's what is different about the United States of America when we at least adhere to her founding principles, seek the Constitution, seek to do what is good. This nation has routinely been a shining city on a hill. And because of these things, because of a lot of things, but largely because we embraced ideas that made this nation different, that made this nation the example for others around the world. Oz and I were looking this morning at total GDP by country. United States GDP is between 30 and 31 trillion dollars. 30 and 31 trillion dollars is what this economy produces. Now, this as we get down through this conversation, you're going to understand. Many of you know this already, but you're going to see, for those who may need a clearer picture, why the United States holds all the cards. And just look at GDP, 30 to 31 trillion dollars of economic output. Second place is China. China, my friends, is 50% below us. Well, they would have to grow 150% to equal us. So they're just under $20 trillion in economic output. So between the two countries, the U.S. and China, it's over 50 trillion, or right at $50 trillion of economic output. Then you drop dramatically to a bunch of countries that are in the $3 to $5 trillion economic output range, GDP range. Germany, Japan, India, UK, France. Then you have Italy, Canada. They're under $3 trillion. And Brazil. So this nation is outputting, the gross domestic product, the amount of total output of the economy is remarkable. And what makes that possible is that we had a series of ideas, a series of ideas that have made this country great. And those ideas are under assault constantly by the radical left. They're under assault by the radical left. They want to remake this nation as founded. They think that if they change the concepts and the ideas upon which this nation was built, we're still going to have that economic output, but we'll have the right ideas then. But see, that is erroneous. We're not going to have that. These two things are inextricably linked. And so these ideas lead to the ability for Americans to be prosperous, to live in prosperity. And that is what has happened. But add to that, and this is where the problems arise. Add to that, the world looks at the United States like this massive piggy bank. The United States accounts for 25 to 28% of all gross domestic product around the world. So between a quarter and not quite a third of all production of an economy comes from this nation. And so the world looks at us like a piggy bank. Well, the United States will fund this. That's where these silly things like Sesame Street and Baghdad come into play. And so we have this big X on us, so to speak. We have all of this production. We've had some sketchy politicians, sketchy decision makers, sketchy people that can be influenced, and it's kind of the perfect recipe. Then on top of that, you've had an American populace that's been asleep at the wheel. We're not today, at least we're waking up, and I think largely have awakened to what's been going on. But this country was asleep at the wheel. Things were good, but even though we're producing all of these things, there's two sides of the coin, right? There's economic output, but there's also the financial burden and obligations. And our government has burdened us to the top of as high as we can be burdened with taxes, with regulations, with sending money to foreign countries, ignoring how there are obstacles that exist between having free trade, between fair trade, between our country and another country. This hurts small businesses. This hurts the working Americans. This hurts America at its core, and it has been ignored for so long. That's where these tariffs came from. Trump says we're not playing by these rules anymore. The United States of America is prosperous. Our people should be prosperous. We're not being prosperous. Yes, we want to do good in the world. And by the way, as individuals, we can all choose good. We can all choose to do good with the dollars that we have, whatever form that might take. There are plenty of people that give to causes around the world, and that's a good thing. I'm reminded of things that our church has done or other nonprofits have done to provide water for people in parts of the world who have no access to free water, just as an example. There's lots of examples of Americans doing things like this. It doesn't require trillions of dollars or hundreds of billions of dollars to go to these ridiculous causes that we have no direct say over as Americans as to what our money is being used for. I've gone through this a lot. I don't want to continue to bog down here, but this has caused problems for the American family. Even though we have so much production, we also have so many liabilities and obligations that our government has gotten us into. The budgets are out of control. I'm going to go through some things that Elon's talking about that Doge has uncovered. The amount of fraud, the waste, the abuse. Elon, by the way, challenged Chuck Schumer, basically saying, Chuck, are you on the take? Are you concerned about the things we're uncovering because of all of the things you have to say about what Doge and my team are discovering here when it comes to waste, fraud, and abuse? Are you on the take? Are you getting a kickback somewhere, basically, is what he was insinuating. So the game is up. There's nothing left to take. Even though we produce a tremendous amount, most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And yes, by the way, I will say, Americans, there are plenty of Americans who need to look in the mirror and say, there are some choices I've got to make, some tough decisions I've got to make. I've got to tighten the financial belt, so to speak. I got to do a budget. There's a conversation that we all have to have, but to ignore the fact that our government is taking this production and is just wasting it or is spending it like it's water, like it's growing on trees, is undeniable, my friends. And that's what's happening, and that's where these tariffs are coming from. So Trump, as you know, instituted some tariffs on countries. And he has got a baseline tariff, and then he's got reciprocal tariffs. So in other words, there's going to be a 10% tariff, Trump said recently, on basically everyone. And if you're a country that has tariffs on us, I've got a mathematical formula that will show what your tariffs are going to be. And so he held up on, April 2nd, I believe, held up a chart that showed what the tariffs were going to be on these other nations. And the media freaked out. What is Trump doing? He's going to destroy the economy. He's going to cause a recession. We've talked a lot about this in here, my friends. Trump is over here trying to crash the economy, trying to destroy it. What is this guy doing? He's a danger, a threat, a menace to society, not explaining what is actually being done. And it's right there. The Caroline Leavitt has explained this. Trump has explained this. Scott Bessent has explained this. A lot of people have explained what Trump is doing. He's trying to reset the global trade deals and the way that international trade is being done today. He's tired of America allowing its products to be tariffed when they're imported to another nation or exported from here and imported into another nation. Meanwhile, we don't do that in return. There are tariffs, don't misunderstand, but it's oftentimes one-way tariffs. And so Trump says enough of this, because all of this contributes to what I was saying earlier. The United States of America is looked at as this giant piggy bank or slot machine or something where nations can come up, press some buttons, pull a lever, and get what they want from the United States of America. And that could take the form of cash and overseas funding of this and that. It can come in the form of military protection. It can come in the form of weapons. It can come in the form of a whole lot of things. And by the way, some of those things aren't bad. I'm just saying Trump is saying enough. This is unsustainable. I've looked at the American people. They have lived under a previous regime that continued to add to the burden of the American people and to make their money worth less than it was. It is an unsustainable thing. There is real hurt in this economy. People are stuck financially. They are desperate. Housing, it's hard to find a house. It's hard to do a lot of things here. As I bump my camera in the studio. But it's hard to live for a lot of Americans. And so Trump has said enough of this. So, pausing that real quick, got more to say about this, of course, as we usually do. Want to remind you, it's kind of a good place to remind you, we have started an online directory where you can go to find businesses that are pushing in the same direction you are politically. These are businesses that have signed a pledge, a promise that they're not going to support leftist candidates and leftist causes. These are businesses that love America. These are businesses that believe in America first. Not America only, but America first. These are businesses that are delivering a product or a service to you that you can find on freedommarketplace.net. That is a online directory that we here at the Todd Huff Show have created, that we're building, that we're constantly looking to improve and grow. But this is where you can go to find businesses that are aligned with your principles and values. So this, I think, is a good thing in the sense and why we did it. Too many times we have businesses who are taking the profits from sales they've made to us and then taking that money and funding causes that we're fighting against each and every day. So no more. Freedom Marketplace seeks to be a place where you can go to find businesses that are pushing in the same direction you are, who are not undermining your efforts by taking profits made from items that you bought from them and then giving it to the opposing political side. freedommarketplace.net is where you can go. It's free to use, by the way, as well, my friends. And by the way, if you have a business and you want to list there, it's very, very affordable to do that. You can go to toddhuffshow.com/freedom for more information or to sign up. But where you'll go for the directory is freedommarketplace.net, liberty and business for all, my friends. All right, so let's get back to these tariffs. So when Trump announces the tariffs, there was just weeping and moaning out there, right? Because, well, for a lot of reasons. A, for some people, Trump did it. If Trump did it, it has to be terrible. If Trump did it, they can't support it. That is built into, 20% of Americans today. They are the ones who have lost their ability to think, to be, to have a mind of their own, to have opinions that are not just alignment with the talking points of their preferred political party of choice. These are people who have sold their hearts and souls to the radical left. Listen, I am not talking about all liberals. I'm not talking about liberals. I'm not talking about Democrats in general, rank and file. I'm talking about the radical left. You know who I'm talking about. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The people who have rejected truth, all sorts of truth, and who are peddling lies, an alternative view of the universe that is not founded in reality. That is who I'm talking about. That is 100% who I am talking about. Some of those people, all of those people, are not going to listen to a thing that comes out of Trump's mouth. If Trump did it, Trump said it, it has to, in their morally bankrupt worldview, be evil and needs to be stopped. So, I've got to stop saying that as I look at the clock here. A timeout is in order, my friends. Sit tight. You're listening to Conservative, Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, the one and only, the ever so beloved Todd Huff. Back here in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. So, I want to continue this conversation about tariffs and what's been happening here in recent days. In fact, I talked about this on today's Todd Talk. Actually, here, I'm just going to read to you the Todd Talk. I don't do this normally. I might reference it, but I'm going to tell you what today's Todd Talk is. And by the way, we do a Todd Talk every day. You can get those on our website, or those are also posted. Where are they posted? They're posted on our YouTube channel. They're posted on TikTok. That's right, friends. I'm on TikTok. Maybe Instagram and Facebook. It depends, I think. But they're always on our website at toddhuffshow.com. And just go to the Todd Talks and you'll see these. But here's today's Todd Talk. My friends, President Trump has once again shaken up global trade. Yesterday, he dropped tariffs for most countries to 10% for 90 days. Pause for a moment there. So Trump had instituted all these tariffs, initiated them, had his chart, held it up for the American people to see, and countries around the world responded. According to the White House, according to the administration, roughly 70 countries, maybe more now, have reached out to the White House to renegotiate. This is what Trump was trying to accomplish. Again, we laid that out in the first segment of this hour. I don't want to repeat that here, but suffice it to say that Trump is trying to reset, to steal a phrase from the World Economic Forum. Trump is trying to reset it and make it a fairer situation. The United States is done being the piggy bank and the slot machine for the world. We're going to demand that we're treated fairly, and we are not going to simply let all the prosperity that we create leave this country and be taken from us by force while there is an immense amount of pressure put on working families and small businesses to survive. Not going to happen, Trump says. So, when these nations started coming to the table, now China, of course, had reciprocal tariffs that they've added to us. So China is not in this group where Trump said we're going to drop back down to a baseline 10% base tariff. So for the most countries, they saw the base tariff of 10% and they saw maybe a reciprocal tariff. Because they were trying to negotiate in good faith, Trump has said, I'm going to pause these reciprocal tariffs. We're just going to have the 10% tariff for the next 90 days. Let's get to work here. Let's fix this problem. So he's dropped those for most countries. However, going back to the Todd talk here, China is now facing a 125% tariff because of, as Trump says, the lack of respect that China has shown to the world's markets. So Trump says, look, China has been a bad actor. China, instead of doing what I've asked them to do, which is to stop this and to come to the negotiating table, they are upping the ante here. Listen, for those of you who have followed Trump for any length of time, if you followed politics, you know that Trump is going to up the ante every time. In fact, for those of you who are new, you may not have heard me say this before. For those of you who have been here for a while, you will have heard me say the only difference between President Trump and previous Republican leaders, including Republican presidents, dating back to, say, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, the only thing different, it's not that the media didn't go after them. The media went after all Republicans on a regular basis. And typically what happens is the media or the Democrats go after someone and the person says, I don't want this. I didn't sign up for this. I came here to Washington, D.C. to stand behind ideas that I believe in, to cast some votes. I didn't come here for all this pressure. I'm not built for this. I don't need this. I'm not getting invitations to the Christmas parties in D.C. anymore. I want to be on the right side of this. And they stop. Now, sometimes they might push back a little bit, but in general, what happens is at the first sign that things are about to get intense, these folks fold. They fold. They don't continue to up the ante. Along comes Donald J. Trump, and Trump does not operate. This is the MO. This is the way that the media, the 7 pillars of propaganda, have dealt with Republican presidents for a long time. And so Trump comes in 2016, and they start all of this stuff, right? Russiagate, impeachment 1, impeachment 2, all of these things. Constant just negativity, negatives on top of negatives in news reports. 90+% of news coverage is negative on Trump, stirring up hatred for Trump, maligning him, misrepresenting things that he said. There's countless examples of all this stuff, right? From both sides had very good people. You remember that when it pertained to Charlottesville, for example. You can name these examples of where the media has taken a quote out of context or where they've just made it up. Suckers and losers, for example, all these things. And normally that would have stopped the Republican from continuing to pursue his agenda. The first time, the first thread of some negative news might have caused the Republican to back off, but not Trump. That's when Trump says, you know what? You basically can bring it. Say whatever you want to say because you're fake news anyway, Jim Acosta. And so the media they never had to establish a plan B, right? The plan was go after Republicans. They back off. We get what we want, right? We get Republicans in positions of power governing like a bunch of feckless losers. But along comes Trump, and it doesn't work. And the only thing the media knows to do is to up the ante. So they intensify their attacks, which in return, what does it cause Trump to do? Intensify his counter response. And this goes unchecked, upping the ante every single time, to the point to where we have now had two assassination attempts on the president, to the point now where, what was the numbers I gave you yesterday? I think it was yesterday. Survey found that an alarming number of leftists believe that, I think it was 45%. Is that right? Oz, do you remember the number of leftists who said that violence against Trump was acceptable? Do you remember that? 55? Oz must have been dozed off in here. Oz says I throw her under the bus. I'm kidding, Oz. So it was a large number of people who believe on the left that violence is necessary, is justifiable. Because of that process, because the ante has been upped repeatedly so much to where we've gotten to the point where we're calling Trump a fascist, we're comparing him to Hitler, we're saying Elon Musk did a Heil Hitler salute from the stage when he spoke on Inauguration Day. This is what we've gotten to, where people are defending Tesla dealerships being attacked. That was 19%. 19% of Americans believe that attacks on Tesla dealerships and Tesla owners and Tesla charging stations are completely legitimate because of this. And it's all because there's been an increase, the upping of the ante to where extreme and absolutely inexcusable political lawfare had been waged against the president of the United States, former president at the time, now the current president. I mean, it has gotten crazy. We all know that we're living in the craziest political times by far in our lifetimes. And so we're here because of the way that the left works, and candidly, the way that Trump responds. And so China made a mistake here. They upped the ante. Trump is going to up the ante as well. That's where that 125% tariff comes in. So going back to the Todd Talk here, in the remaining time I have this segment, I said, look, it's been wildly entertaining to watch people react to these tariffs. Trump haters who once despised the tariffs, right? Just a few days ago, they were telling us how it was the end of civilization and how they're going to cause a recession. They're now criticizing Trump for easing them. Don't believe me? I've got some headlines I can read you in the next segment. I can't do it right now. Trump caves, I think, is what I've seen. Trump gives in, as though Trump... This is the purpose. He's not caving. These people are either intentionally misleading you or absolutely stupid. But it continues here, my Todd Talk. Meanwhile, leftists are suddenly defending big corporations losing value in the stock market. I never thought I would see the left defend the value of stocks in the stock market, especially from evil big corporations that they hate. But now they're doing it. They suddenly care about this. Some Senate Republicans are trying to limit Trump's tariff powers, including, by the way, a senator in my state, Todd Young. I saw his name on that list. Todd Young wants to limit this for President Trump. Not surprising to me, but you need to know this, and it's why we need someone else to run against Todd Young in the primaries here in a couple of years. But going back to the Todd Talk here, at least one House Democrat is now supporting the tariffs. Love or hate tariffs, my friends, I wrote here in today's Todd Talk. They're forcing nations to renegotiate lopsided trade deals. That's what's happening. That's precisely why Trump froze for 90 days all the tariffs except for the baseline 10% tariff, unless you're China and you got that 125% tariff coming your way. And I said, with hope and expectation here, fingers crossed, so to speak, maybe this will inspire more folks to think critically instead of parroting party lines. Boy, wouldn't that be a good thing? Instead of just saying, what's the issue? What's their race? What's their political party? Okay, now I've made my decision where I fall on this issue. How about we have some nuance? How about we think about these things and understand sometimes there will be disagreement even between conservatives, even between Republicans, my friends. I got to take a break, though. A little bit long this segment. Sit tight. You're listening to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff, back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Final segment of this, the first hour. Never fear, it's a 2-hour program. So we'll continue some of these things I've mentioned into the next hour, including Elon and what Doge has discovered. But I wanted to reference this article really quickly in the time that I have remaining in this hour. Headline, New York Post. This is, my friends, in the stack of stuff on our website, toddhuffshow.com, if you want to read it yourself. If you do not trust my reading abilities here, which sometimes could be questionable when I get my my brain ahead of where my tongue needs to be. So, will Trump tariffs cancel Christmas? Chinese makers of decorations report no orders. Chinese producers of plastic Christmas trees and other festive decorations say orders from U.S. clients, which are crucial for their business, should have started to come in by now. But because of surging import tariffs, they haven't. Now, this is what is going to happen. This is the natural consequence effect of these tariffs. Now, some people will say, some people might say, look, we'll import an item, we'll pay the tariff, and sometimes they might be able to eat that. Sometimes the importer might cut their price to accommodate part of the tariff. Sometimes that'll get passed on. And long term, it has to get passed on to the consumer. But there's also workarounds, right? Apparently, the people who are buying Christmas trees and other festive decorations, according to the New York Post here, are either waiting, but you can only wait so long because it takes time to get these products, to get them shipped in, produced, and all that stuff so that they're ready to sell by the time people are buying Christmas ornaments and decorations, which I don't know when that technically starts, but it seems like it's quite early to me. But anyway, so this is what happens. And these companies are saying, look, we should have had orders by now. They haven't come in, and it's because of these surging tariffs. President Trump, going back to the article here, has raised tariffs on Chinese imports by 104% so far this year in an escalating trade war that threatens great pain for the world's largest exporter of manufactured goods. U.S. retailers are almost completely reliant on China for Christmas decorations, where they source 80% of such goods worth roughly $4 billion. So 80%, 87% of these particular goods come from China, roughly $4 billion, and they're not getting orders. Chinese factories, going back to the article here, are also heavily dependent on the U.S. market, where they sell half of what they make. So listen to those words. It is impossible for people. Listen, there are multiple discussions you can have regarding tariffs. You can talk about the short-term uncertainty. You can talk about the market volatility. You can talk about how this will impact certain businesses. All those things are legitimate. But if you want to have a full conversation about tariffs, you also have to look at the numbers. You have to look at who holds the cards, as Trump would say. We hold the cards here. These factories are exporting half of what they make to the United States. That is more than leaving a mark. This is something that Xi Jinping and the Chinese government are going to have to be aware of and consider in their calculations. Oz and I were talking about this before the program started on. She asked, what is Trump expecting Xi to do? Just to say, okay, we're going to give in here. Xi wants to save face. No, this is a negotiation. There's going to have to be a way for Xi to save face, certainly, to look like he got concessions as well. And Trump is totally fine. Trump doesn't care. Trump's objective, listen, it's incredibly clear. I've stated it. They've stated it. They want the United States of America to be treated fairly and to not be footing the bill for everything happening in the world today. We're no longer the piggy bank. We're no longer the magical slot machine. We are a country who is going to put her citizens first, citizens who have carried an unbelievably heavy burden because of decisions made over the past decades and because of leadership even as early as just this past January as they were leaving office, though we couldn't tell you exactly who the leader was because the person whose name was at the top of the ticket was completely incoherent and clearly not the one making decisions at that time. So this is the sort of thing that's going to happen. This is evidence that while it's painful, and listen, my heart goes out to these Chinese businesses too. They're not the ones that have caused this. They're not the ones that have caused this. It's been their government, and their government's going to have to fix it very soon, or there's going to be massive problems. Massive, massive problems, my friends. So, running out of time here, but I do want to tell you, the time I do have available, that if you are a lover of seafood, check out Kenai Fish, Kenai, that's how you spell Kenai, fish, KenaiFish.com. Folks, they have fresh seafood coming to you straight from the waters of Alaska, directly to your home or business. It doesn't matter if you're in a landlocked state. We're talking salmon that comes from the world-famous Kenai and Castle Loft rivers, Soho, Coho, king salmon. They've got halibut from the Gulf of Alaska. It's perfect for grilling. It's good for a lot of recipes. They've also got king crab, snow crab, scallops, a whole lot more. This is harvested in Alaska, shipped to you in vacuum-sealed packages, and it comes via next day air. So check out KenaiFish.com, KenaiFish.com. Promo code Todd will save you 15% on your order. Again, KenaiFish.com, KenaiFish.com. Promo code Todd saves you 15%. I gotta go. See you, my friends, in the next hour. Thanks for listening, SDG.